Welcome to the Dominance Academy. Tonight we're going to be talking about the rules of attraction. And for this evening's live, I've forgotten to put the appropriate link. So those of you who were looking forward to this, it wasn't even scheduled because I didn't flip that little switch. But anyways, here we are, and we're going to be going over the 20 rules of attraction. And this is actually a free book that's available on my website, thedominance.academy.com. So you can download this and use it to your advantage. And these things, they're fairly universal. They're it's the sort of information that can help you out in very general ways to increase your visibility, to increase your attractiveness. And so, what is that? Because there's a lot of different kinds of attraction that we can talk about, and people will think, well, I need to go into the gym and make myself attractive. I need to beef up my wardrobe so that I can appear attractive. I need to learn some, beef up my mouthpiece, and this is what makes me attractive. And these things may work, right? They will help you. It's not like they're bad things to know. But the reality is that there's other factors involved that if you do not possess them, it's not going to matter how nice your wardrobe is or how many muscles you've got. And we'll be getting into that a little bit later. But we're just going to wait because I didn't schedule this properly, so people weren't notified. So perhaps they're getting notifications now, and we'll just wait for them to stroll on through. And in the meantime, what we can do here is I will read an excerpt from the Codex of the Sovereign Order. And this is a book of wisdom for men and for dominance. And so this will give you a taste of the sort of thing that's in here. So this is, I just opened it up to chapter 4, the mirror of obedience, verse 6. It's called The Depth She Reaches When He Becomes Her Horizon. A submissive does not descend into obedience simply because she chooses to. She descends because the sovereign provides a horizon she can walk toward without fear. His presence becomes the far edge of her world, the point of orientation that tells her where to move, how to breathe, and what part of herself may finally rest. When he stands firm, she goes deeper. When he expands, she follows. When he remains the same man today he was yesterday, she feels the stability required to let her soul unfasten. Her obedience grows in proportion to the space his structure creates. When he is small, she cannot open. When he is uncertain, she cannot descend. When he is divided, she cannot give him her wholeness. But when he becomes expansive, not in volume, not in demand, but in the quiet breath of his presence, she discovers depths within herself that only his steadiness can unveil. She is not pulled downward by force. She is not invited downward by gravity, or she is invited downward by gravity, his gravity. That is why the sovereign must cultivate depth within himself, not drama, not intensity, but not spectacle, depth. That kind that comes from unshakable calm, from clarity unmarred by insecurity, from the kind of authority that does not rise from dominance, but from the integration of self. She senses this depth instantly, and her instincts respond by descending into the natural posture, yielding, devoted, and surrendered. As she goes deeper, she begins to mirror not just his presence, but his purpose. Her obedience becomes the expression of his direction. Her softness becomes the space in which his leadership breathes. Her devotion becomes this confirmation that his structure is worthy of her surrender. Her descent is not collapse. It is expansion downward. It is the flowering of her submissive nature in the soil of his stability. She reaches depths she could never find alone, because depth requires a boundary, and she cannot be the one to set it. Thus, the sovereign becomes her horizon, the line she moves forward. I'm sorry, the line she moves toward, the form she shapes herself beneath, the presence she measures herself against. In serving him, she fulfills herself. In following him, she finds herself. In reflecting him, she becomes more fully what she was designed to be. Thus is the 24th teaching. She descends as deeply as he stands. Her surrender is the measure of his depth. Her devotion is the proof of his horizon. So that's actually a little bit more straightforward than many of the other passages that are in there. Most of the passages tend to be a little bit more poetic than what that was. So let's take a look at the 20 rules of attraction and see what that's all about. And again, if any of you want to get your own copy, just go to the website and you can download this for free. All right, so where are we? Here we go. So the 20 rules of attraction. So the first one is to understand that attraction is a response reaction. A woman doesn't have much control over her body getting wet when she's aroused. This is actually a bit embarrassing for her. Think about it. When you were a young teen and you saw a hot chick and your dick got hard, you had no control over it and it was a bit embarrassing. That same holds true for women, but it can't be seen. However, if you're that guy, then you just know, and she knows that you know. And now the emotion of embarrassment is linked with arousal. She's feeling a complex blend of all sorts of things, much of which is subconscious. That means real attraction has nothing to do with your car or your watch or your six pack or your job or your status or anything like that. Because the fact remains is that what makes a woman wet is nothing that you possess, that you physically possess. What makes a woman wet is what you embody and her perception / belief of you. And there's some guys that are very good at wielding a certain perception and belief, right? Or that creates a belief. So really but I would say it's more important to then not figure out what they're interested in or what generates a perception that might get them horny. It would be because then you're just kind of like a shapeshifter. You're like, what's her name? Mystique, right? She's always shapeshifting and doesn't know like what she really looks like. And and so the thing is that would be better is to learn to embody your own authenticity. That you show up as real as you possibly can, which means eliminating self-doubt, embodying some pride, some self-respect, self-love, self-appreciation. And then you can be more honest with the sexual being that you are. And this is something that can create that uncontrolled response of her, her pussy jumping or twitching or becoming wet or whatever. There's a lot of things that can happen. But it's when you know this is happening, and then you can kind of tell there's these like micro expressions, these tells of her getting aroused. And you can kind of send back a micro expression saying, I know what's happening right now. And you can press on it. You can make her feel a little bit more embarrassed, that sort of thing. And like I remember I was at this bar and the sexual tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And I remember we were sitting on these stools like facing each other, and we were talking in close proximity because the music and the people. And then I bent down a little bit lower and I made a loud sniffing noise because I know she was getting wet, and it gives off an odor sometimes. And I came back up and she was like, what were you doing? Like, what were you smelling? Like, kind of like, you're like, oh, do I smell okay? Like, think it's her pits or something like that. And I just kind of gave her this like sly, knowing look and a little bit of a grin. And she got completely red, totally red in the face. And that was enough. Just a little bit of a sniff was enough to kind of like push her. So now she's got this layered experience happening within her body of this emotion. She's already sexually attracted. Her body is like physically being aroused that she has no control over. And she's stuck with it. She's stuck in this state. So it's fun when you can kind of acknowledge like what's happening to them. Um, that skill can be held in many different areas, basically acknowledging the state that they're in and whether they're feeling good, they're feeling bad, they're feeling scared, they're feeling angry. It's just a very useful skill to use all around. So, first one, attraction is response, reaction. Okay. It's not typically something you can orchestrate, right? But you can just increase the probability of it by showing up unabashedly real. So the second one is present yourself in a way that says protector. All right. Nothing says safety to a woman than being around a guy that she at least perceives as someone that can protect her. Since we don't live in street wars or amongst man-eating beasts, this desire is mostly about her emotions. It doesn't look physically imposing, or it doesn't hurt to look physically imposing. It's just that if a physical emergency were to happen, you'd be able to handle it. That said, go to the gym, lift, become more physically strong. How this looks on an emotional scale is you being unmoved by anything that the world throws at you, okay, including her. So her emotional stability, or your emotional stability, says that she would be safe with you, that you're unmoved. And the thing is that you can have muscles and be thrown off your square. You can be physically fit all over the place. You can be in the fucking Ironman competitions. But when a certain stress comes along, like a girl who's upset or, whatever, maybe she's really flirting with you and you don't know what the fuck to do because your nervous system's not conditioned for that sort of thing. It's conditioned for running up hills with a backpack on, then it's not going to matter. Okay. So the visual thing, like being physically fit, it's always a good thing. Like, fuck the woman. Like, it's just a good thing to have. Right. But that just kind of aids a little bit in her perception, which turns into part of her belief about you. But if you fold when she puts a little bit of verbal pressure on what she thinks might be a man, but she's not quite sure because there's a lot of charlatans out here, due to guys kind of like copying masculine symbolism and putting it on like a jacket, and then they find out that the dude's just a male posing as a man, right? So of course she's going to test, right? She's going to figure out, or try her best to kind of figure out, if you're a man with an M, or if you're a male, or a capital M rather. So don't be afraid of the little tests. Like it doesn't matter, right? It's just a little squirrel sniffing you, like big deal. And so if you look the part and then you fold, well, then that's really bad. Okay. You emotionally, or you get frozen where she turns you into like a deer in the headlights. And this is no good at all. So what's more impactful is having that strong sense of self and being unmoved and unwavering whenever she brings about something to you that could possibly be a test. Because typically when you're out, you're not going to get into some emergency situation where you can like prove that you're, super capable or whatever. So while the muscles are good, the fitness is good because it's better than being out of shape. What's more impactful to her is the emotional stability. And you guys need it a lot. All right, number 3 here, fucking your feelings. As it relates to being a protector, you cannot allow your feelings to dictate your behavior and your choices. Emotions have never been a useful tool for decision making. Don't do it. Stay level-headed, be stoic, look at things, including women, from an objective perspective. And the harsh reality is that women don't really care about your feelings for the most part. Even if she's your woman and you're committed in a committed relationship, the extent to which she cares about your feelings is quite limited. but managing your emotions isn't her job, it's yours. And I would say the only time that it really kind of matters if something catastrophic happens, right? Your niece gets killed in a car crash, your dog gets abducted. So like just something like really bad. But you having a bad day at work, or I don't know, just I don't even know like what guys complain about. But if you're complaining and she can see your softness, right? You being milky, right? And she's like, ugh, that's like a milky male. Not something solid and dense. All right. You're being milky. And it's a turnoff, right? She's like, ugh, what is that? What is that taste? Right. And this really just leaves a bad taste in her mouth. And it what it does is when that happens, it alters and shifts her perception of you, which then changes the belief. Okay. So you could be this guy and you look a certain way because you've looks maxed, okay? But you've not fucking like centered yourself maxed, right? You've not stoicism maxed. Your emotions are just easily set off. And she'll observe these things. And it'll be quite easy to observe. Why? Because they make decisions from their emotions all the time about how they feel. And I can tell from you guys, like when you're talking, when you guys call up on shows and when I'm listening in on Clubhouse and things like that, a lot of times the person starts off their statement with the guy. He says, well, I feel like, and he's talking about how he feels about a particular topic. What does it matter how you feel about it? It doesn't, it's not relevant how you feel about a particular topic. Your feelings could be one way, but what you think about it is another way. And perhaps they're meaning to express their thoughts, but they're framing them up as a feeling, which is it's just a poor way to talk. You're not self-aware. And so on top of minding your emotions, you should also be minding how you communicate, because that tells another person, like someone who's observant like me, how your mind works. So you gotta like kind of tighten things up and streamline things a little bit. All right, number 4 here is don't be afraid to communicate sexually. All too often, guys will be afraid to communicate their sexuality. They feel shame and embarrassment around this. No, be part of being a masculine man who is filled with testosterone is that you're attracted to women. It's pretty basic math. As an added bonus, if she sees you being comfortable with your sexuality in a non-creepy way, it will allow her to feel safe to show her sexual side, because you're setting the tone that you're very comfortable talking about sex and not from like a hungry, needy, like waiting for her to get involved sort of energy, right? It's just another thing you talk about, like you're talking about the football game from last week. It's very relaxed, nonchalant, as though you always have conversations about sexuality, and it's not a big deal. You can then go in, perhaps after the conversation becomes a little more comfortable, you can then start talking a little bit about fantasies and the things that you like and things that you're into and that sort of thing. Because if you start talking about that, like what you're into, your fantasies, kinks, like as long as you kind of keep them like a little bit like family friendly. Like if you've got like a kink around fisting, like I wouldn't bring that up right away. but anything else, like let's see if just you could say like, yeah, I've got a kink around like playing with rope, right? That's pretty family friendly, or like somewhat mainstream. This can encourage her, like, oh, like, and then she might just agree with you, like, oh, like I like the idea of that. I've never played with rope before, but I've seen videos, I've seen pictures, and just it looks like a lot of fun. Like, oh, I once had this boyfriend and he didn't exactly use rope, but he used his necktie and he tied my wrists, and boy, that really turned me on. And then you're like, well, neckties are very smooth. Wait till you feel what rope feels like, the rope feels like against your skin. And, and so now you're kind of like projecting imagery in her mind, that sort of thing. and start describing it in detail of like what jute feels like. Jute is a kind of natural rope that is commonly used in shibari. It's probably like the best rope for that sort of thing. Though there's many different kinds of rope. If you're into natural ropes, the best thing to do is get some jute. Just a sidebar here, if you do go that route, there's two ways you can go about it. You can just go online and buy treated jute rope. Because when you get it raw, it's scratchy. There's all these hairs and shit all over it. It's very stiff. And you can then go online and just look for the steps necessary for softening the rope. So it's a little bit more flexible and pliable, and less hairy and prickly. So there's a process you can do to treat it. So you can get the natural untreated and do the treatment yourself, or you can go online and you can find a jute rope that's been treated. So that's my suggestion. I like doing things myself, so I just bought a bunch of rope and then just treated it. It's kind of fun because you guys sit there over the oven and like twist it and move it along and burn off all the hairs and like add oil and a lot of like rubbing along metal things to break it in. It's I don't know, I like the process. So don't be afraid to communicate your sexuality at all, ever. Just kind of like tone it down if it's something that's really, I don't know, out there. All right, number 5 here. Don't try to understand female logic. Women are inherently chaotic. This is not an insult. It's just that's just the case. And as men, we cannot expect them to have the same level of control and level-headedness that we do, right? At the same time, this mutability of a woman's mind is precisely what allows them to be susceptible to influence and leadership. Trying to understand female logic is a waste of your time. It's like trying to understand why water moves haphazardly or why trees in the forest grow in irregular patterns. Just appreciate what it is with no judgment. And this kind of goes back to, I think, one of the earlier ones about just looking at women objectively, right? That's really important. And the problem that I see is that a lot of guys, when they don't have experience with women, is they spend a lot of time researching women, like how they think, why they do this, like this and that, all about like female psychology and that dreaded female nature, right? And it's a huge waste of time. It really is. Because when you know yourself very well, you don't really have to understand them. Not really. Because you get so like attuned with your own desires, your own needs, and your own expectations, your values, your codes and your principles and the rules that you live by. This becomes such like a centering thing for you that you only need to pay attention to the girls who are coming into that field, right? You don't have to figure them out. You can just kind of, as Steve the Dean says, put in your bid, right? You make your offer. And then if they want to come in, really you just have to continue doing what you do. Like there's really nothing special that you have to do. You don't have to figure them out at all. Just see if they're getting on your program or following your system, however you want to word it. And that's really all that's necessary. All this like trying to figure women out and why they do this and why they do that, it's irrelevant. It really is. Because going back to that mutability of women, if your leadership and your influence is strong and is on point, then it's not going to matter what's in their head because it's going to be replaced by your influence. Does that make sense? It doesn't, like her perceptions are going to be replaced. Her beliefs are going to get replaced. Her values are going to get replaced. Her habits are going to get replaced. Her preferences are going to get replaced. All of these things that you're trying to figure out, her motivations are going to get replaced. And so all the things that you're trying to figure out are just going to become irrelevant at that point. So what's the point in starting beforehand, right? It doesn't make sense. Just go talk to the girls and figure yourself out. That's really all that's necessary. But guys, they'll sit on the sidelines like they're playing fucking fantasy football and start analyzing and looking at fucking statistics and behavioral sciences and women doing this and that and these studies and all this crap about like female psychology, how has that benefited you? Have you gotten that much closer to what you want by indulging in all of that stuff? Probably not. Probably not. But when you put that energy towards yourself, you'll find that you do get a very strong return on your investment, right? Putting time into figuring out women does not bring you a strong return on investment. I know this guy, he's a coach, and I would say he knows his shit like really, really well when it comes to like female psychology. And I would listen to some of his videos and I'm like, wow, that's good. Like you really know what you're talking about. And so like from an analytical scientific angle, I can really appreciate what he does. Like it's great. It's impressive. But then I'm thinking, how does that actually benefit him? Because knowing those things will not make him influential. Knowing those things will not alter her beliefs. Knowing those things will not make her wet. It's just knowledge about like a certain creature, right? But it doesn't allow you to possess the creature. It doesn't bring the creature to you and become enthralled with you. So why spend so much time with that sort of information? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, yeah, I don't even need to make an analogy. But another thing that I see guys doing is in that research, they go, and they scratch their head and they're like, wow, women are really fucked up. Like they're just so fucking crazy. They're unpredictable. They seem kind of devious. They're self-centered. They're, like emotion driven and all this stuff. Why can't they just think like a man? And that's kind of like what they're implying. Okay. It seems like they're implying that they would rather women think more like guys do. And then when a woman does, that same group of guys will sit back and complain that the women are being too masculine. They're too assertive. They're too organized. They're too direct. And so it's like, wait a second, like, do you want them to be chaotic and feminine? Or do you want them to be organized and masculine? Like you can't have both, And then I'm not saying that all feminine women are chaotic and discombobulated. That's not what I'm saying. But it's like the kind of energy that comes off of them, right? It's the amount of flexibility that's happening in their mind. Because I do know some women who are extremely rigid in their mentality, and they're not very feminine. They're very assertive. They're very decisive, and they're unyielding. Like when they have a decision, a plan, a choice, there's no bending it by anyone's sense of reason or logic or will. And so it's like, oh, okay, so you don't like the chaos. You don't like the mutability of a woman's mind. You want that fixed directive sort of mindset that comes from that kind of woman. And they're like, no, that's a turnoff. Well, pick one. Pick one. Because if you take the assertive mindset, then you are probably going to either have a battle on your hands or you're going to have to back down. And if you choose the more mutable mindset, it calls on you to become more decisive and organized yourself. So do you want to dominate or do you want to assimilate? You got to choose, right? You can't have both. Well, you can. It's called switching, but that also requires a switch. And that can be very, very complicated. I was having a call tonight with one of my best students, and he was just kind of reflecting on him having conversations with other guys, and because it's been months that we've been working together, and he's progressing really, really well. And he was reflecting on how he was, and reflecting on conversations he's had with friends or with his brothers, and he can't even relate with them anymore. And he's tried to share just a little bit of like what he thinks they should do based on the things he's learned. And inevitably, it would just make them frustrated. It would put them on the defensive. They would be confused. And he's just like, I can't believe like where I am now compared to where I was. Like he's like, I was doing like everything wrong, and it was all because of me, like how I was in the relationship. The girl was just being a girl, right? They always were being girls, just doing girl stuff as squirrels will be doing squirrel stuff, right? And when he started to change, now he realized how powerful of an influence that became when he started solidifying this new identity, and like everything became clear. And it only helps that he's building a power dynamic relationship with his girlfriend. But the bonus there is that the things within in power dynamics and BDSM is that it it um it creates defined roles. There's very little gray area of what's to be expected, what happens in the relationship, who does what, and it makes everything a lot easier. Yeah, it makes everything a lot easier. Let me just check something really quick. What are we doing here? Okay. Um, so yeah, he was just kind of reflecting back on just how easy things are now that he's put um, power differentials in his relationship. And it's opening up his creativity the more he lets go of his bullshit and is less emotional and step protecting certain things inside him. He's done a lot of work, like a lot of internal work, and he's really, really progressed. So at this point, that chaotic part of his girlfriend, or the chaotic nature of his girlfriend, is no longer fearful, intimidating, or um, yeah, just intimidating, because he didn't know what to do with it before. It would always catch him off guard, or he would react emotionally himself. And now he's just like, oh, like whatever, and just kind of like swirls the situation and changes it, and then directs where it should be, right? And before, he would just abandon that shit. He was just like, I don't know what to do, and he just like abandoned the emotional situation. And this is typically what guys do. But now he's like a junior wizard, and that's the difference. Maybe I should change. Well, now we get copyright sued if I change my school to Hogwarts, but that'd be cool. start start marketing as a school of magic and wizardry. Okay, so number 6 here is never judge a woman's sexual nature. You guys are terrible at this. Absolutely terrible. While we're on the subject of judgment, you mustn't judge a woman's sexual nature. Forget all of what you heard when growing up, that women are good girls and only sluts like sex. Every woman enjoys sex. Well, they like good sex. And why wouldn't women like sex? For us, it's purely a physical matter. But with women, it's a full body experience that includes their mind and all their emotions. It's a deeply penetrating experience for women on multiple levels. There shouldn't be any surprise that women love good sex. Don't hold this against them. All right. Because when you do, you're saying, I don't approve of your sexuality. I find your sexuality deplorable. I find your sexuality intimidating. And this will shut her down. While at the same time, you're wanting to fuck her. So it's like guys are all fucked up. They're like, I want to fuck you, but I'm going to judge you for being sexual. And I get it. Like a lot, like deep down, it's like, yes, you would much rather her be a virgin, right? And that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine to want someone who has no experience or little to no experience. This is perfectly fine. Um, let's see here. But one second. So So the thing is that when you release judgment from the sexual stage, it kind of gives her a signal. It gives her the signal that you're comfortable with sexuality, especially if you're talking about it easily. And if she brings up her thing, like let's say with the encouragement from the steps before, where she is more comfortable and she shares a little story, right? And she's like, "Oh, like, this one time, like, I was with, like, my previous boyfriend, and, like, he came all over my face, and I just fucking loved it." And instead of saying like, "Oh, that's so fucking gross. Like, I can't believe you would let somebody do that," or you just have an expression on your face that says that. And instead, you're like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, I love that." Right? How did that feel? Or how'd that make you feel when it happened? Then she feels more encouraged, right? To open more instead of feeling your judgment and then shutting down. All right. And I know that just there's a lot of guys and you just can't fucking stand women. Like you're just stuck in that paradigm. You're stuck in the paradigm of detesting the thing that you desire most. And I feel sorry for you. I really do, because that's got to be a terrible place to live. You're living in contradiction, complete contradiction. You can't stand the thing that you desire, or you can't stand a thing that you desire. Yeah. So it's really important that you leash that judgment, because it's not going to do anything for you. It might sound cool if you're on some podcast and you're being, you're a podcast host and you're just kind of like flaming away on women's sexuality. It's not going to help you in the long run. It really isn't. It's not going to help you in the moment either. It's just going to make you look like a stiff dick and not like the good kind. It's going to be a major turnoff, and it's going to say, all right. And what all that does is when there is that judgment, it reinforces some things that she already carries within her, right? Because, like let's say the girl's like 30, okay? She's had a number of years already of society judging her sexuality, friends judging her sexuality, parents judging her sexuality, religion, school, government institutions, television programs, all sorts of stuff, okay, that are judging her sexuality. And then she's internalizing some of it. And that like, this is bad. I love it, but it's bad. This is feels really good, but I shouldn't. And if I do, like, oh, I feel gross. Like there's so many things that can compound within women, that by you just making some sort of statement, or by you having a uh even just an expression on your face, this will just reinforce those feelings and like trigger those beliefs, and put her in a state that's not going to be enjoyable for either of you, right? And it just shows that that you're a prude, like you're uptight, okay? And if you look at, say, like sexy archetypes, like in movies, literature, television shows, things like that, the male lead who that is cast as like the sexually desirable guy, he's not going to be like this. He's going to be very relaxed. He's going to exude like some kind of like moderate level of sexual aura, and you couldn't imagine him judging a girl for enjoying this or that in the bedroom, right? So, and that's part of what makes those characters so appealing, is that they have this swagger about them. And swagger doesn't include judgment, right? Because judgment is a little bit uptight, which is the opposite of swagger. Okay. So just keep that in mind. All right. Number 7 here. Number 7 is that women get sexual mostly from their emotions. So while we're on the subject of women's emotions, it must be understood that while women like the image of an attractive man, it is not his looks that turn her on exactly. It's what occurs in her mind after she sees him. much of it turns into fantasy. And I don't mean like dragons and wizards, but just projecting ideas into the future. All right. And this isn't always something that is wild. Okay. Usually it's just thoughts of what he might do to her sexually, or even what being his girlfriend might be like. These fantasies then generate feelings, which then translate into her getting turned on. Which, with this understanding, it is important to note how vital it is to be able to guide her emotions. This is especially powerful during sex with both dirty talk as well as affirmations. It should be noted that women all love all emotions, even when they don't. And perhaps like love here is a typo. It's like they accept all of the emotions, right? Whereas us, we kind of have this habit of sort of shutting things off that are not conducive to what we need to do. And perhaps that's just part of our nature, part of our genetics, part of the roles that we've had, since we were like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, um, as part of like survival, right? Because like we couldn't get scared or worried when it came to like, I need to go hunt that fucking animal or we're all going to die, right? That sort of thing. So that might be due to our evolution. I don't know, but with the women, they don't do that. It's all integrated, and they accept that of them. So this is why women will purposely watch a sad movie, because there's something about getting really charged with that feeling. Okay. And this is with all the feelings. I can't fathom the idea of saying, you know what? I feel like feeling sad. So let's go find the saddest movie I can on Netflix and just watch it and just let myself get filled with sadness. Like, I'm like, why would I do that? Like, I don't listen to depressing music. I don't read depressing books. I don't watch depressing movies. And it just boggles my mind. But tons of girls do, right? They just eat that shit up. Now it's not judgment, it's just knowing that we're different. And so they they accept all the emotions even when they don't, right? So confusing, I know, but trust me, when I say they love a bit of a roller coaster ride when it comes to their emotions, they love the variety, all right? And when you are in control of your emotions, when you are still, right? There's stillness within you through practice. You developed this. That means that you're no longer affected by her states, her emotional states, which gives you the clarity to then influence and guide her emotional states. Does that make sense? If you are thrown into emotional states while interacting with her, how are you going to be able to guide? You won't have the clarity to do it. It'll be all muddied up, right? And so a lot of it will be spent on you trying to protect your ego, trying to protect your feelings based around like what's going on with her. And it's just going to be a terrible outcome. It's just not going to thrive. So it's incredibly important that you harness this aspect of yourself so that you can influence her more easily. And you can, like, when you do this, when you set yourself up in that way, it becomes so clear. It's almost like, I don't know if you've like raised children or anything like that, but it's very similar where you can like really see the emotions that come up like with a child, and you can bring them easily into these different states. I mean, unless they're really fucking like cracked out and they are just beyond, they've gone like the point of no return and they're just fucking crashing out. Sure, you can't bring a kid back from that. You just got to let them fizzle out, lose steam, and then you say, okay, you're done. Here, have a tissue, wipe your face, and let's go get some ice cream. Um, but you can wield things before it gets to that point, before they crash out, and you can do this so much easier when your head is clear, because it allows you to see and hear and think without influence. And it's a tremendous power. And when you do that, it absolutely builds trust. It builds a tremendous amount of trust because it says this guy won't break. Like, I'm not going to be able to break him. So I'm going to allow myself to be free. I'm going to tell him shit that scared off other guys. I'm going to tell him shit that my dad said. I don't want to hear that nonsense. Okay. I'm going to be able to open up to him and in ways that I've not been able to open up to other guys in the past. And this allows her to become more fluid. What we talk about in my other shows, she becomes more fluid the more she gets the sense that your container is dense, that your container is solid. And by solid, meaning it's non reactive. It holds its state despite what's put into it. It could be water, it could be boiling water, it could be liquid acid. It doesn't matter. The form is still going to stay the same. It's not going to budge because of what's put in there, right? It could be warm tea, it could be soda. It doesn't matter. It's still just going to be the same. All right, so number 8 here. Don't be a mediocre beta male boring guy. Boredom. This is women's kryptonite. As much as women need stability and structure, they also crave variety. Have a life. Do something interesting at least once a week. Grab a friend and go put on some nice clothes and get a drink at a bar, the nicest hotel in your area. And hotels are a fantastic place. Like if you live in a city and you want to go for a drink in a hotel, like a nice hotel, because they're not going to turn you away, right? The bartender, he doesn't know if you're staying there or not. And it's not against the law to get a drink at a hotel. So to even like think about that, there's going to be people, especially if it's like a decent season for travel, like around holidays or nice weather. And there's going to be people from all over. And you can meet them at the bar if there's perhaps like a lounge or a bar like on the top floor. Maybe you meet somebody, hit it off, they bring you up there, that sort of thing, because usually you need like a key card to go to that part of the hotel. But either way, you can meet all kinds of people. And man, I would go to this convention in Philadelphia every year, and I would stay at different hotels. So I was there for a week, and I'd spend a couple days at this hotel, spend a couple days in another hotel, a couple days in another hotel, and I was always meeting women at these places. And one of my favorites was this very sexual, like slightly eccentric cougar, and I was just like she was so upfront, like really just kind of pouring it on. And I'm like, man, I've never been with a cougar before, right? And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Like, of course, like after a couple drinks, she was just like, okay, this is just stupid, right? Come up to my room. I'm like, all right, like what else am I gonna fucking do? And so we went up to our room, fucked around, and it was a great time. But this is the sort of thing that happens that hotel bars where they're in a metropolitan area and people are traveling because time of year or the weather or whatever. So don't ever discount the hotel as a place to go. So anyways, go to hotels, go see musical events, keep an eye out for art openings, make small and large adventures part of your everyday life. So when a woman happens to make her way into your life, you can simply bring her along on something that's already been established as a way of life. All right. So if you already do these things and and you start seeing this girl like a couple times a week or something like that, and she's like, hey, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, well, usually around this kind of time of the week, or you don't even have to explain that. You say like, oh, I'm going over to this place. There's an art opening, and I'm going to go check out these paintings, and you want to tag along. And of course, like they like variety. She's like, okay, like especially if you're already fucking a couple times a week, and she really likes you or whatever, she's going to be up for spending time with you, like regardless of what you're doing. Okay. And she's going to want to, take pictures of herself and bullshit like that. But, who cares? So when a woman happens to make her way into your life, you can simply bring her along on something that's already been established as a way of life. If your life consists of work, gym, home, video games, porn, and sleep, right, a woman will become very bored with this unless she's really into gym, work, video games, and porn. Okay. Sure, there's going to be some girls that do that, but I think the vast majority of girls are not going to like that very limited number of variables repeated day after day. Okay. And if you say, you know what, I could give a shit, then fine. Like, don't give a shit. And if that's really like you enjoy your life like that, then enjoy it. Right. I'm not sitting here criticizing you if that is your life. All right. I'm just saying that a lot of girls, they like variety. And but you can keep this and inject variety. Okay. You can get new games. You can change your workout routines. All right. So, and if you try then to make things more interesting, most likely it will be to appease her. This is a self made trap. If you are mediocre, don't expect a relationship to be anything but mediocre. So the point is is uh is don't like have this knowledge that girls like variety, but then say, okay, well, I'm going to change my life to be more interesting to women. All right, like that's the self-made trap because now you're putting your position in of becoming a simp, and that's just no good. Do this so that your own life becomes more expansive. Okay. By doing different things, you then meet different people. You get exposed to different environments. And if you live in a metro area, there's different pockets of circles like all over the place. And it's just a great thing to try to like integrate yourself into these little zones. All right, number 9. Don't be a friend, right? No friend zone. If you want to be seen as a masculine sexual man, the most important thing you must absolutely do is not to present yourself as her friend. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't be friendly. What I mean is to never present yourself as a guy that secretly desires her sexuality. She knows why you're talking to her, yet you're not presenting yourself as such. It sends mixed messages. Do not do this. Be honest and genuine with your interest as someone who's not about being her friend. And this is one of the massive faults that guys do. They're like, I want to get to know this girl. I want to take her clothes off and I want to have sex with her. Like this is part of your interest, okay? And this is granted very like level 1 man, but it is like a man thing that's done. So, and then they'll take that and say like, "Hey, like what's that book you're reading?" you know? Granted, I'm not saying walking up to a girl and saying, "Would you like to fuck?" Um, I mean, that might work out for you. Who knows? But that's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is not keeping your intentions a secret. No one benefits when you hide your intentions, and then the girl might move on those things and move under false pretenses. And then when those pretenses become brought to light, she now feels deceived. And you're thinking to yourself, well, it's so fucking obvious, right? Well, yeah, it was. But maybe she's not deceived. And she's just annoyed the fact that you tried to deceive her by coming off to her like you're some gentlemanly guy that would never want to come on her face. Never. Oh, no, not me. I don't even ejaculate, you know? So it's like they know what guys like. They know what guys want. They know why you're talking to her in the first place. And the thing is that because of the shame that you carry with yourself, you're embarrassed that you know that she knows. And then there's this like little false game that you kind of put on the front end, right? And I don't know. That's it's kind of like a part of why I love that cafe scene that I talk so much about from Vicky Cristina Barcelona. And the guy is just definitely not hiding his interest. And I think the first thing he says to one of the girls, like walks up to her, like saunters and looks at her and says, "What color are your eyes?" I think that's the first line he says. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, uh, but it's the words were just nonsense. It's like whatever. I'm just saying something, but it's who is saying it and what I'm saying in the subtext. And you're like, what's the subtext of what color are your eyes? The subtext is you're attractive and I'm coming over here to, you know, put in my pitch, right? I'm pitching you an idea to get involved with me sexually. And that's what he did. He's like, yeah, there's this island that has a beautiful sculpture on it that I want to see. And I'm flying over there tomorrow, or in an hour, rather. I'm flying over there in an hour to see it. And he's like, I would like you ladies to join me. Well, what are we going to do there? Well, we're going to see the sculpture. I will show you around town. We'll have good food, good drink, make love. And the three of us, right? The girl was like, the three of us? Yes, the three of us. And there was nothing hidden, right? Now, granted, it's a movie, it's not real life, but he was saying what he wanted to say without being graphic. Okay. And he was being very mature about it, and not ashamed at all. Like, he was just very much, this is what I want. And he was okay with it not happening, because his main thing was going to see that sculpture, right? That was the main thing. Just like I was talking about having a life, like doing stuff, right? He was already doing stuff. He was with this group of friends. They were talking, doing whatever, and he had this plan already to go see this, to fly over to this island and see this sculpture. And he just saw an opportunity, like, oh, there's some girls over there that I could just bring in. They're attractive. They're together. They're foreign. Let's just see what happens. And then he kind of left it. He was like, hey, you know, make up your mind, because I'm leaving in an hour. and basically saying, like, I don't need you to come, but it'd be great if you did. But the plane's leaving whether you're with me or not. And that's a great mentality to have. Just the general sense of, the plane is leaving whether you're with me or not. And not in like this, chip on the shoulder, bitter, modern fucking manosphere guy, right? The Either you're with me or you're against me. It's like, yeah, it's not really like it. That's not the way. Okay. So don't be afraid, and don't be a friend. Number 10, validate a woman only when she's earned it. Okay. Women love validation, and it's because they have so much self doubt. They love anything that makes them feel attractive, valued, and desired. This is because most women have a baked in element of insecurity that often can't be resolved from within. Unfortunately, this has been somewhat cured by the droves of simps that validate women on social media. It's not greatly fulfilling, but it gets by, much like eating a candy bar when you're hungry. It'll take care of the hunger, but it's not nourishing. As a man with a woman on your program, you are to validate her only when she has earned it. Never do nice things just because. Do nice things when she's shown consistency on your program, and be vocal about it. So, for instance, baby, I'm doing this because you have been consistent with X. I love that about you and wanted to recognize your efforts. And therefore, I got you this, or we're doing this, or you just have the praise itself be the reward. This over time will teach her that good things come with good behavior. And there's that old saying, you have to train people how to treat you. And this is just how it must work. And in order to do this, your convictions to your principles and your system or your program must be stronger than your attraction to the woman. That's the only way this works. So that means the attraction you have to and for yourself has to be greater than your attraction to the woman. This is how this works, because this is you answering to a higher calling. All right. Not necessarily a spiritual one, or it's one that you have designed for yourself, that you have said, this is how I choose to live. This is what I follow. This is what guides me. Not you, not your nice tits, not your sweet little ass, not your pretty face or your gorgeous hair. None of that guides me. All right. I would like to have it with me, but it does not guide me. It doesn't influence me. I influence me. My program influences me. And if you're going to be here, it's going to influence you as well. And that influence is just not given away freely. Okay. And this is why I don't fuck around with a lot of girls. I've learned that I must be very choosy, right? Because I don't want some girl who's fallen madly in love with me, and now I have to deal with that. All right. That's like that reminds me of Family Guy, right? Where Lois is standing in the kitchen and Stewie's sitting there like pulling on her shirt or something and going, Mommy, 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 Ma, Ma, Mama, Mama, Mommy, Ma, Mama. And then she's like, What? And he goes, Hi. And he runs and then laughing, he runs off. Like that's what it's like, right? Because they're constantly vying for your attention because they love the validation. And when they fall in love with you, they're very vulnerable. They're opening more and they want more. And if you don't have the capacity to give more because not only you're busy, not only are you working or you're running a business, or maybe you've got that plus other girls, maybe you've got kids, maybe you've got hobbies, maybe you've got animals, a home, other things that you're taking care of, it's going to be much harder to manage all of this stuff. And if you don't manage it, it'll become more and more and more annoying because they're just constantly going to be hitting you up for this shit, right? And then constantly like making drama because maybe that will turn into some frustration and then anxiety and then detest. And she's like, I'm calling my ex-boyfriend, yeah, right? And then like trying to get under your skin. That's just too much. That's just too much for me. So knowing that when I touch a woman, like in her mind, in her heart, on her body, it's going to make an effect. So I need to be very choosy with who I bring in. And so it makes things simple. Okay. Because I know that if they're coming into this system of like what I just described, where their behavior starts molding, because I'm not just going to like let a girl just be around, just to hang out, just to like take up space and like suck my dick whenever. Like that's not how it works because I don't have like a nonchalant world that I live in, right? So she'll be ushered into the program and then she starts getting conditioned because I don't just give things away freely. There's conditioning in there, all right? And so now I've got this other thing that I have to manage. And it's just a fucking headache, right? So that's why for my life, it's a maximum of like 2 to 3 girls. And that is it because there's just not enough bandwidth. And then if I allow for it, they're just going to get little trickles and it's going to drive me fucking insane because they're just going to go crazy. So just know this, like the more you develop yourself, the more you realize that you have influence, the more choosy you have to be and the more discreet you have to be with whom you interact with, because it could be the fine line difference between everything being smooth and things turning into chaos. Okay. But that's just my experience, at least. Someone might have a different experience. All right, number 11 is never be afraid to check undesirable behavior. While we're on the topic of good behavior, we need to touch on bad behavior. This will come up from time to time while dating or at the early stages of a relationship. When this happens, it must be handled immediately with stopping the poor words or behavior with his own words. Never put your hands on a woman, no matter how disrespectful she is. I mean, unless you have set this up. But I wouldn't do this in dating era or even early relationship. Like if you're just like, hey, I'm a power dynamics guy, I live a BDSM lifestyle, I'm not going to bring like a new girl into like the realm of spanking, right? Because that is part of a whole system of like commitment and training and the whole fucking thing, right? So keep your hands off these girls, all right? Even if you're in the lifestyle, that's just my suggestion. So after the words or behavior is stopped, it must be redirected with, I want you to be able to express your feelings, but when you do it, it will sound like this. And you give her verbatim of what words should be said and how they're said. Then tell her verbatim what you want to hear. In instances where there are high levels of disrespect, she just must be dismissed from your life without haste. Like you don't bother to correct something that has gone into the red zone, okay? There's no point. Right? Either she made a massive mistake or she just chose to go that far. And at that point, there's no reason for discussion. There's no reason to deliberate or point things out or try to make her feel bad or try to correct it. Nothing. Just immediately the axe comes out, take off the guard and swing it once. That's it. The limb just gets cut off immediately in one blow. There's no discussion, right? You can say, listen, that's not going to work here. This is ended now. And you leave, or you say, leave. If she's like in your apartment or your home, leave. Can I call you an Uber? Right? Please collect your things and go. All right. If she flips out and she starts, Louis, try it again. Say, I've asked you nicely. Please leave. If she refuses, you can tell her, I'm going to ask you one more time, and then I'm calling the police. Right? Hopefully things don't get that out of hand. Okay. But this is what you must do, right? You must protect yourself. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is sometimes. And this is also why you should never put your hands on a woman, because these things can get easily like thrown way out of proportion, and it will fall on your shoulders. Okay. So this is why you don't want to continuously engage with bullshit, because it can lead to greater and greater bullshit. So when you see that like red zone disrespect, don't try to fix it, right? Let your ego take the fucking hit, take out that axe and drop it, and just cut the relationship off right then and there, or the dating situation or whatever you're in. Okay. Just end it, cut it off. It's not like I've been with this woman for fucking 35 years and, you need to kind of like work something out, right? No. This is a girl that you've known for a month, right? Or 3 months or whatever, or 3 days. It doesn't matter. All right. And if you have the balls, actually, I would say you should still use the axe in a marriage that you've been with a person for 35 years. Because if it's reached that red level, that red zone, it still doesn't make it any less disrespectful. Okay. It would just be very surprising, because hopefully by that time she's already known all of that stuff, like where the red zone is. So if you're doing it right, you won't be seeing that shit after 35 years. Or number 12 of being attractive here, be decisive and lead. One of the things a man can do to completely ruin his attraction with any woman is to be indecisive and let her lead. Women do not want to lead. They want to follow a strong, masculine, decisive man. All too often, guys are flexible and have a go-with-the-flow mentality. They're happy to just be near a woman and don't say no to her ever. They don't give her instructions and don't decide on anything. Men commit with their thoughts, words, and actions. They're able to then verbally convey these commitments to a woman without fear or discomfort. And this is something that you must embody. Embody being a decisive man. Don't hem and haw. If you're uncertain about something, just fucking choose one and go. If it ends up fucking up, who cares, right? It's better than doing nothing and sitting there going, oh, what do I do? I can't decide. Well, boom, you just got shot in the head, okay? You must choose. So don't sit around and fucking like exhaust yourself trying to make the right decision because you're afraid of like what she might respond. Who cares, right? Make your decisions and go with it. If it turns out that it's great, great. If it doesn't turn out how you'd expect, then whatever, you pivot. That's just the life of man. That's just how it is. Okay. So don't be indecisive. All right. Stick with your instincts, stick with your education, stick with your perceptions, your beliefs, your habits, just whatever it is, and just be committed to that. And if she doesn't fucking like it, okay, great. Like that's perfectly fine, right? Is she not liking it and following along? Or is she not liking it and standing there with her arms folded? Like, no, right? Either way, I'm still going. The train is still taking off, Okay. So you can be on board with a smile, you can be on board grumpy, or you can stand there next to the rails, fucking grumpy and stamping your foot. It doesn't matter. The train is still fucking going. Okay. It doesn't stop for anybody. All right. All right. Number 13, you don't have to be smooth. You have to be authentic. People who talk about game include being able to be smooth with your words. While I believe this is a great skill to have and should be developed, it is not absolutely necessary. What is absolutely necessary is you being authentic. This means first knowing what you're about, what you stand on, and what you desire, and also not being afraid to communicate it. If you want to add a smooth mouthpiece on top of your authentic voice, so be it. You'll be that much more impactful. Okay. And this comes down to just a bunch of like inner work, right? And wondering what it is that you're withholding, right? What are you hiding? What are you ashamed of? What are you feeling guilty about? Um, do you hold shame around certain things that happened in your life or certain interests that you have or whatever? And that narrative of like maybe not being good enough or whatever sort of narrative that comes through, this is going to prevent you from being authentic. Okay. Because this is like I discussed this earlier today, as well as like other shows. What happens is like we have like this series of like good and bad things that happened in our past. And it slowly starts to kind of coalesce into something that's got some form to it. And that form then has tethers to our identity. And so we start identifying with the things that have happened to us in the past. And this becomes somewhat of this like weird form of our identity. And we start just believing like that's what it is. Okay. This is not your authentic self. This is just a concoction of things that have happened in the past. It's not really real. I mean, it's real that it happened, but the identity that's formed from that is not real. Okay. So it's very important to make these distinctions. It's not who I am, it's just something that happened to me. It doesn't define me. You ever hear like shit like that? Like someone who's dealt with something terrible in their past and they say, listen, this is something that happened to me, but it doesn't define me. Okay. So that's taking back ownership of your identity despite the things that may have happened. Okay. It's really important to do that because that's the beginnings of developing your own authenticity. And then coming to terms with the things that you like and also coming to terms with your shadow because there might be some things about you that you don't like. And so what happens is like we separate our shadow from our conscious self and we start saying taking parts of ourselves that we don't approve of and pushing them off into the corner and trying to pretend that it's not there. When you bring that back out from the corner and say, listen, yeah, I accept that this happened to me, or I accept that I have this belief. I accept that I have this interest or whatever. Okay. And not judging it or anything like that. And that does not mean that these things are permanently with you. All right. It doesn't. It just means that right now I'm accepting all of these things of me. I'm not rejecting any part of myself. That's the beginnings of showing up authentically. And you can see this with people who have been through some shit, right? Like I had a good friend of mine. He was a childhood friend. I met him when I was 5 years old. And at the time, my dad was working and my mom decided to become a babysitter for the neighborhood when I was a little kid, just to make some extra money. And so she became this babysitter and she met some different moms and they came and dropped off their kids and they became my tight friend group. All right. And this one kid, we'll call him Carl. He was awesome. He was a great kid. But then something happened. I don't know if there was like a traumatic experience, like that kind of like set him off as a teenager or whatever. But it didn't help that he had like hippie parents who were always smoking weed. They were always drinking, throwing parties. They had the best fucking parties. But especially their Halloween party. He was just always around drug use and alcohol use, always. And, he was really into baseball and playing drums and all this stuff. So he like wasn't like them, but he was influenced by them. And I remember that he started getting into drugs. This was right around when underground raves started to happen. This was like in the early to mid '90s, and this is when he's started doing drugs, and he got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And like weed became it was definitely a gateway drug for him. Some people it's not, for him it was. And he started doing coke, started doing LSD, mushrooms, heroin, crack, meth. Like he was doing like everything. Okay, maybe not all at once, but he was certainly like just moving through drugs, like I don't know, moving through like a food buffet. And like I remember, like we went on our senior class art trip, and we went to we rode on a bus to New York City, and we dropped some acid like 30 minutes before coming here. We were seniors in high school, and he was like, "Hey, you want to do some acid?" I'm like, "What?" Like I'd never done acid before. He's like, "Yeah, come on." Like you just so we took half a tab each, and 30 minutes before we got there, we got off the bus, and we're just like, poof, it hit us. We're like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" And we're looking at all these art things that are coming to life and sculptures that are looking at us and shit. It was pretty wild, but I just dabbled. Like I've done tons of drugs in my time, but it never stuck. Like I would just try a few times. Cool, that's fun. Like whatever. I've got more important things to do. I guess he had an addictive personality, and it just overran his life. Completely overran his life with mostly drugs. He did drink, but he was mostly about the drugs. And he had to go to rehab a few times. I think he went like 2 or 3 times to rehab before he finally got cured, or well, clean anyways. And when he came out, he was the most authentic person I've ever come across in my life. Like with this bursting heart of gold. And there's just something about people who have just gone through some shit and come out on the other side, and they're like reborn. They're just like washed of just all their crud, but like not rebirth through like angels and water and all that stuff. It's like being washed by fire. And he was like that land clearing method, where they call it slash and burn, but it actually like makes the land stronger and better. And so he that was him, and he came back just so fucking authentic, but in such a beautiful way. It was just amazing. And that's what I'm talking about, authenticity. Like when you're really real and you're not rejecting, like you faced your shit, right? Like being authentic isn't just like talking without an editor. Like that's not what that means, okay? It means not rejecting part of yourself. It means not hiding from yourself. It means not being embarrassed by yourself. It means like taking in the things that you don't really like about yourself and making them acceptable, right? Not necessarily likable, but you just accept it. This is what is. Like he had to say to himself, I'm a fucking addict. I am an addict for the rest of my life. Whether I'm doing drugs or not, I'm an addict. I need to accept this of myself. It's who I am, or part of who I am. And I don't know, just something happened and he just became golden. It was amazing to see. And when you're around somebody who's authentic, it becomes infectious. The feeling that they give off, their aura, is infectious. You just feel good around them. And women love feelings, right? So when you're around, they can catch a vibe, and it's not a vibe that's manufactured. Like I'm trying to be smooth. I'm trying to be like that cool guy. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to be nonchalant. I'm trying to be Don Juan, right? No, it's a vibe that just emanates from you. And they're like, that's fucking tasty. That feels different than all this manufactured nonsense that I can just see right through. And notice the little scared boy hiding behind the curtain. This is something real, all right? And they can't deny the feeling. And they're like, oh, I want to spend more time around this, right? And then from that, you're drawn in and you're like, okay, welcome to the program. Here's your pin, your little name tag. Hello, my name is. And And then, welcome. Here's the pamphlets. We've got coffee and cookies. But like that's what draws them in. It's not necessarily having a great mouthpiece. But if you learn to develop this, it's just going to make things even better because now it's coming from a place of authenticity. You're not like trying to learn lines, trying to woo her mind or anything like that. It's just turning your authentic communication into more of an art form, which art is not a necessity. But when you add things, when you add art to things, it becomes so much better. It's like cars don't have to look good. Like if you could just design them purely with function, they probably wouldn't look all that great. But they're like, you know what? We can do that, but let's add art into it and make it beautiful because we can. And so we've seen some gorgeous cars throughout the decades, right? It's kind of like that. Okay, so be authentic. You don't have to be smooth, but be authentic. 14, fuck her really well. This just can't be replaced by anything. This should go without saying, but unfortunately, it must be said. If you don't fuck a woman really well, you will not capture her. And by well, I mean utilizing the 4 pillars of fucking, right? Dominance, immersion, variety, and emotion. I won't go into detail about each pillar, but for that, you can learn within the halls of the academy, right? There's the link here, but you would get this if you were to get the book. But and I'll tell you this, you must fuck her like she's never been fucked before. And this doesn't mean harder, okay? It means like she hasn't been fucked before, right? So that means different. I'm not saying like, stick your dick in her ear, but it's with who and how, okay? Not necessarily what. So her spirit must be broken and uplifted to another level when she is with you sexually, such that she surrenders her body, heart, and mind. Breaking and raising her like this is what creates addiction on her part. And so, if you want to learn more about how to do this, go and pick up a copy of How to Be a Dominant Lover. Okay. It's quite thick. There's a lot of information in here, and I've not heard a bad review yet. Go to Amazon and just do a search for the Dominance Academy, and you'll see my books there. You can purchase it there as a paperback or digital download. But that's all your answers to number 14 here are in there. Okay. And it's not about impressing her, but it's about creating a precedent that will shift her psyche. And that's what you want, right? You want that shift. You want to like crack her ego, not necessarily destroy it, but you end up like cracking her ego, which is attached to her emotions, her perceptions, her beliefs. And now she's like, there's this like ray of light coming through. And she's like, I didn't see that before. Like, what's that? And her body is like, what's that? And her emotions are like, what's that? Her psyche is like, what's that? All right. And you're like, it's me. I've come down from Mount Olympus. Right. And really this is what happens, right? You just you crack open something and shedding light into this new way. And she goes through that crack. It's going to be like a transformative sense of being. And then she's like addicted to how she feels when she's with you. She's even gets addicted to how she feels when she's not with you. Okay. Like your presence is still with her when you're physically not even there. All right. Like that's influence. That's power. Just like that scene in Conan that I talk about where the, like the cult leader, Thulsa Doom, and he's surrounded by his cult people. And he says, look, you want to know what power is? It's not in muscles and swords and shit like that. No, this is power. And he's like, hey, little girl, come to me. And the girl just walks off the cliff without a word. She doesn't say like, yes, my Lord, or as you will it, or whatever. She just walks, falls to her death. And he's like, that's power, right? He's talking to Conan. He's like, that's power. He's like, how strong is the sword compared to the hands that wields it, right? That's influence. When you don't even have to touch them and they move, okay? This is power, all right? This comes from authenticity. Well, it comes from combining all of these things that we're talking about, all right? At this point, you don't have to rely on techniques. You don't have to rely on being this like a pickup artist with understanding her female nature. And you got to figure out how to do this and how to do that. And like girls, they're so influenced by this. And oh my gosh, these statistics say that and all these things. Do you think Thulsa Doom even considers any of that shit? Not at all. And if he did, it wouldn't change what he does. It wouldn't benefit him at all. It wouldn't influence what he does. It wouldn't boost it up. Like, oh, now I know all this stuff about female nature. Now my powers have grown exponentially. Not at all. Because they're an irrelevant factor. You waste your time with trying to figure them out. Just like it'd be a waste of time to figure out squirrels. I mean, unless you're, like a squirrel researcher trying to write a paper for some fucking research company or whatever, Like that's the only time it counts. Like when it's your job, right? Like you're a sociologist or something. But it's not your job. You guys do research on women that, like, if you got paid, well, if not all of you, but if like some of you got paid, you'd be fucking wealthy for doing research on like female nature. And what's funny is that you do nothing with it. Like some of you guys could probably write a book about it. And then the rest of those fucking nerds would buy the book and they're like, oh my God, and fucking like masturbate with the pages. It's like, it because, and I say that because like it's like a clusterfuck, or it's like a circle jerk, right? It's a circle jerk. The only people that care about that shit are just other guys who care about that shit. And they're like, yeah, man, 42%. 42% of women do this. It's like, so who cares, right? 42% of squirrels like walnuts over acorns. Sweet. Okay. So like, what does that mean? Are you going to like get more walnuts? No. We just know that they like walnuts more. Or at 42%, right? It's like, okay, great. So like, how does that help your life? It doesn't. We just know squirrels like walnuts. Sweet. Okay. Great. All right. All right. So number 15, do not care for her attention at all. What I'm talking about here is neediness. Don't be needy for anything from a woman. Not her attention, not her time, not her sex, not her energy, nothing. A strong masculine man has no need for these things. He loves women. He appreciates them, even their craziness. He enjoys them, but he does not need them. Neediness is antithetical to leading. For a man cannot lead when he's afflicted with the disease of need. This creates an opening for her to manipulate and control you, right? And I don't say like that out of fear, but it's just something that is inevitable to happen because that's just part of her nature. That's just how things react, right? Like just the opposite poles of a magnet. It's like they don't mean to come together. They just do, right? It's kind of like that. The openings will, or the possibilities for manipulation and control will just happen like two magnets coming together. So to prevent all that bullshit, get the need for anything from them. Really, except if you're trying to start a family, there's really nothing you need from a girl. Nothing. The only thing is like, okay, I need to start a family, so I need her uterus. I need a mother here to start a family. That's what I need. Maybe you don't even want to start a family. You just want a child, okay? So at that point, you don't even need the mother part, okay? If that's really what you're about, you're like, yeah, I don't care. I just want my kid. And there are some guys that are like that. But anything besides that, like the function of procreation that absolutely requires a female body there, what do you need her for, okay? Like, oh, I need her for companionship. Okay, peel that back a bunch, okay? Really dig into that concept of like, I need a companion, all right? You'll come down to the root of that thing. guaranteed there's a root of self-rejection. Guaranteed. I would put money on it that the root of that is self-rejection. And it gets layered and layered and layered and layered with excuses, beliefs, perceptions, feelings, and cultural things and all this stuff. And then it comes out to sounding just very normal for a guy to say, I need a woman to be my companion, right? Because that's socially acceptable. It's written into narratives, it's written into stories, written into movies, written into music, right? And it's just this cultural belief. And you're like, yeah, that's sensible, right? For a man to need this woman, right? But really go into your own psychology, start peeling away those layers, start looking, start asking questions, write down answers, be objective. Even if you feel something a little uncomfortable, just keep going. I guarantee there's a section in there that has to do with self-rejection at the very bottom of these things. And what's underneath the fear of rejection is the belief that you're unlovable. That's really what the core of this is. So you need a woman to be your companion, or whatever your need, fill in the blank. It largely has to do with believing that you're unlovable, that you cannot be loved. So solve that. And I guarantee that all the things that you said you wanted from women and why you're into them and why you want them, and I'm not advocating they should be gay, like that's not what I mean. The emotional reasons why you want women, okay? It's all because of that stuff. I guarantee it. And you sort that out, it's not going to affect your desire for them. Not at all. It's just going to change the pathways by which you interact with them. The intentions behind them, the psychological, unconscious intentions will be completely different, which will then alter how you behave. It'll alter how you think. It'll alter how you speak. It'll alter your choices. And in effect, it will alter how she reacts to you, because she's not going to pick up on that need. None of it. And she's like, this is a guy who doesn't need me. Why doesn't he need me? Am I cute enough? Am I hot enough? All these other guys need me. Look at these tits. They love this. They need me. They want me. Right? He doesn't do that? Well, he's just very stable. He treats me neutral. He doesn't like me, but he doesn't dislike me. What's going on? Aren't I cute? And of course, there's that little voice in her head is like, no, you're not cute. Right? You're ugly. You're fat. Right? And then the other part is like, no, shut up. That's mean. Don't say that about myself. Right? I'm a beautiful, strong girl, or a strong woman. I deserve better. And then wait a second. Neutral guy isn't coming after me still. What's going on here? Oh man, I don't know. They're crazy, right? But I appreciate them. I appreciate the crazy. I'm just like, man, look at those squirrels. They're just going crazy, running in circles up and down the damn tree all day long. They're like, oh, okay. Maybe occasionally throw some breadcrumbs for them to chew on. Whatever. Okay, 16. When talking to her, look her in the eyes. Okay. A simple way and great way to be attractive is to hold eye contact. Hold eye contact with a woman when you're talking with her. It becomes even more important when you give her instructions to look you in the eye, like during sex, during her orgasms, and during blowjobs, right? It's very, very powerful. So, you're in the bedroom, you're messing around, you wanted to change position. Let's say you're in missionary or whatever. Or you're in the spoon position and you turn her head towards you and you lock eyes. You say, get on all fours, right? That's going to be way more impactful than just pulling her up onto all fours. Okay. Way more impactful. All right. Or you fucking just get up, creating distance. Right now she's naked, but not touching you. She's exposed, right? You kind of get up, maybe you're on your knees, or you step off the bed and you're now standing on the floor. And she'll turn and be wonder what's wrong, right? And you just stop, look her dead in the eye and say, get on all fours. That's gush. Her pussy just gonna start gushing again. All right. simply by just having eye contact and giving a very simple command. Really, really simple. Okay. And of course, the more creative, the more confident you are, you can just embellish on top of this. All right. With a whole myriad of things. Okay. So, but in the realm of conversation, there's a bit of tension that happens when you look someone in the eye. And we can all experience this. We all feel it. You meet somebody, you look in the eye, there's this little zzz, like there's this tension, right? And it's not necessarily bad or good, it's just tension. And and so by holding eye contact, it shows her without saying that you're not afraid of this tension, that you're perfectly fine with it and you have no problem with it. In fact, you enjoy the tension. Like you're like, yeah, let's bring it on. I can stare you in the eyes all day long. And you're relaxed in it. Masculine men are relaxed. Males are tense. Okay. So this is a very subtle way to show her that you stand on your square, right? You stand on business. You don't fuck around. And it's weird. Like I'm reminded of this other guy that I knew, also a drug head, but wasn't so bad. Like he had to go to rehab. But he did a lot of drugs. And he was also really kind of weird and scattered and like really like twitchy, you know? He would never make eye contact with you. When you're having a conversation, and I knew him for years. He was a great friend of mine. He was part of our friend circle. This is like post like senior year of college and like a couple years like post. He would never make eye contact. You're talking to him and he's like going like this and joking around, pointing at this, like always darting his eyes around. Will never lock on your eyes. Never. Not once. And it's just how he was. And it made people feel off. But after a while, you just learn to accept it. It's like, okay, yeah, this is Patrick. Like, yeah, it's just what he does. This is just how he is. And and that's how it goes, right? But for women, you can't do that, right? Should just be like, what's with this guy? He's so shifty, right? Shifty doesn't mean calm, confident, grounded, right? Relaxed. That will increase her tension. It'll make her be like, oh, like I can't read him very well. Okay. 17, never look for accountability in a woman. Okay. Women are not often accountable people unless they have done work on themselves to grow in this way or had parents that instilled that accountability in them. But this doesn't mean she's off the hook. It means you can't expect a woman to have accountability for her actions. Okay. Accept it and let it go. Don't get annoyed or frustrated. Instead, hold her accountable to your rules. This ties in with rule number 11, okay? And rule number 11 here is never be afraid to check undesirable behavior, okay? So you can teach them, right? You can't expect, like, I can expect guys to hold themselves accountable. Like, that's kind of like part of manhood. Again, when I was saying before, don't expect women to behave like men, all right? You look at the virtues of humankind, like having like honor, dignity, courage, like all this stuff, okay? Integrity. These are all things that for millennia have been associated with the male archetype, okay? Now, that's not to say women are not capable of these things. I'm just saying that, like, when we talk about these things in general, even today, it's largely assumed and applied to the male archetype. So, and it just makes sense. It's just part of nature, right? Nature's chaotic, right? Chaos and integrity don't exactly mesh. Okay, like chaos and honor don't exactly mesh. It's just nature, right? So you don't get pissed off at them. You don't be like, oh, why can't you be like men? Why can't you like hold yourself accountable? Why can't you do this stuff? Like that's just getting too lost in the weeds. Okay. Fuck all that. Like, don't bother. Like, oh my gosh, accountability, kryptonite. Whoa. You know, that's just poking at them for not being like a man, right? And it's like, are you gay? Like, do you want her to be like a man, right? Accept what she is. You don't get mad at the fox for being a fox. Just accept its foxness, right? This is part of it. Now, it doesn't mean they're off the hook. Like I said, you check the behavior, right? And then teach her to adjust with positive reinforcement and sometimes negative not negative reinforcement, but consequences. All right. So just accept that this is part of the behavior, but it doesn't mean you have to accept the bad behavior. Just accept that they're like this and that you can teach them to be accountable. And if she really likes you, she's going to allow herself to be checked. She's going to allow that little blow to her ego. She's going to allow herself to be corrected, and she's going to follow it, right? And then you can kind of like seal it if you really want to add a little bit of extra polish and say, what are you supposed to say when someone corrects you? Right? And it's like it's sort of infantilizing, but it adds this flair of like kind of like a little boost to your authority. Okay. And because you remember, like that's what mom and dad used to say. You know, what do you say when someone gives you a present on your birthday? You're like, oh yeah, all right, thank you, right? So you're recalling that old phrasing. What are you supposed to say when someone corrects you, right? And say thank you, right? That's right, good girl, right? So now you're already like beginning that power differential, okay? By leveraging her attraction, her sexual attraction to you, the gravitational pull that she has to your authenticity and things like that. And then you don't like allow her to feel like shit after being corrected. Like, yeah, that's right, you fucking idiot. Like, you don't carry on like that. All right. You pull them in, right? You pull them in and make them feel comfortable again. Okay. It's like, if I'm like punishing, like, well, I don't really punish my kids anymore. They're like teenagers and shit. They're pretty well behaved. But like when I had to, when they were younger, I wouldn't just let them sit in the state of being caught and then feeling bad for their actions and then feeling bad about the punishment and then just like leaving it that. Okay. And be like, all right, you're done. Right? Like sort out your bad feelings. I'm going to go do something else now that I've dealt with your poor behavior. It's like, no, you deal with the poor behavior, but then you redirect it. Okay. Remember, you're wielding the emotions. All right. You just let them sit in a state. You now scoop that up and say, all right, come on. Now, like you've been punished for failing the fucking whatever thing at school or whatever. And now we're going to go get some ice cream. Okay. Or whatever it is. Right? We're going to go to the movies later. Pick out the movie you want to see. Because you can't go to Blockbuster anymore. That was always fun. But so the point is that you don't let her sit in the state. You bring it in and you shift it into something positive, because now it's like you're the corrector. You're going to call her on some shit. You're going to correct it. She's willing to be corrected. So now you reward that willingness. You don't just let it sit there open and exposed. You encapsulate it, right? You bring it into your containment and you make her feel good afterwards. So it's like the associations start happening. There's a process here. Sometimes I may not like it, but at the end, I feel great. I feel closer. I feel connected. I feel better. It's like daddy's giving me a nice big hug, right? Everything's going to be okay. And that just really like makes your presence impactful, like beyond measure. Okay. There's so many guys who do this wrong. Even when the woman's willing to be corrected and she's like, shit, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, that was my fault. My bad. Like, thanks for correcting me. And he just leaves her there. Like, yeah, that's right, bitch. And he like walks off into the room. It's like, you only did it halfway. Right. Okay, so 18, don't always answer our messages right away. It goes without saying that a masculine man is busy, like truly busy. No video games, not lounging with Netflix, not porn. Men are growth-minded, and this requires your time and attention. As it pertains to a woman you're talking to, if she messages you, tell her that you're busy, and you'll get back to her at a specific time. Like, listen, I'm really tied up. I won't be able to really engage with you until about 6:30. That's it. And you just leave it at that. Okay. But don't be like just telling her like, oh, this is like what I'm like, implying that you're busy. If you really can't engage with her, then say, listen, like I'm really busy. I'd like to talk to you, but I'm really not going to be free until about 6:30. So only if you have developed a strong mouthpiece should you get into a brief, fun, sexy conversation that you are leading towards something you desire. Okay. Don't pretend to be busy. This is dishonest and weak. Instead of lying, get busier. Fill your day. All right. Then it's authentic. You don't have to lie and be like, oh, yeah, like don't respond for 7.5 minutes. Right. 42% of the time. Right. Um, the that's just stupid, right? That's lying. That's trying to project an image so that she won't like reject you. Okay. I gotta make myself look cool for her so she thinks I'm super awesome, cool guy. Right. No, you're being a dickhead to yourself, right? For the sake of some little girl, right? For the sake of some like a little wet hole. That's what you're doing, right? You're forsaking yourself for this little thing, right? This little creature that fucking goes crazy and bounces around, right? Like that's what you're doing. Sacrificing your integrity for that. It doesn't even make sense. So why don't you truly become busy, right? Truly start expanding yourself as a man. Expand yourself as a human being, right? Read something, take a course, go to a seminar, like find out like what you're interested in, what would you like to learn, and do some research about like where there's courses, where there's classes, where there's discussions happening. Like get involved, okay? Instead of just be like that simple shit like work, gym, home, sleep, work, gym, home, sleep, work, gym, home, sleep. It's like, oh my God, are you just kind of like doing what you need to do just so you can like get to the deathbed? Right? Like, I'm just going to bide my time with the simplest thing possible. Hopefully, like, get my dick sucked a little bit along the way and then die. And hey, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But personally, I think that's just a waste of time, right? Like, what? Just get it over with now. You know what I mean? Like, just, why wait so long? Or you can create an interesting life by expanding your interests, right? And it doesn't mean always doing something, but like get books and actually like sit down and read them. Okay. Create research projects for yourself. All right. Have fun, like do things. Okay. And the doing is again not necessarily physical, but it should include that. Okay. And then when you communicate to her saying, "Listen, I can't do this," or whatever, it's truthful, right? You're not trying to lie to her so that you sound cooler, right? Um, and uh, and if you really aren't doing anything, if like I said, if you don't have like strong communication skills where you can like bring things into a nice, sexy conversation and start kind of like manipulating her imagination and her arousal and all this stuff, don't fucking bother, right? Just like, hey, I'm not doing anything, but frankly, I don't really want to sit here on the phone like messaging. I'm just kind of relaxing right now. And like just leave it at that. Don't just like engage with her texting and shit just because the time frame allows for it to happen. Like that's ridiculous too. Like seriously, what the fuck are you gonna talk about? Right? Especially if the girl's new. Like, what are you doing? Be unmoved by any of her antics or emotional states. As a man has emotional control, right? Without it, you are susceptible to her whims, desires, complaints, flirtations, jokes, anger, guilt, and so on. A man has what I call at the academy the mountain mind. Okay. Mountains are immovable, right? They're not resisting, right? They're just stable. They're not resisting the hurricane, tornado, meteor shower, blizzard, lightning storm, right? It's just stable in what it is. It's not bracing itself against these things. Okay. It is still. And a man has stillness in him, and nothing can disrupt this calm. Okay. And this is just something that takes practice, right? It starts with having self awareness in the moment when you have become destabilized by a particular situation, by a person, what they've said, what they've done, and developing the awareness to kind of like come to the clarity of like, oh, this is happening to me right now, and not going to the blame part and saying, oh, well, they made me like this. Okay. Because that detracts from your ability to really come to terms with what's happening with you and and learning the language of talking to yourself and kind of bringing things down and settling and smoothing things out. You have to kind of get off of that blame knee-jerk reaction, okay? And so you start that self-awareness of watching you take these reactions, and then you start catching yourself. And then you catch yourself a little bit sooner, and then a little bit sooner, and then a little bit sooner. And then it becomes so soon that it's like precognition, where you're like, oh, I know that I sometimes react like this with this kind of stimuli, and I'm not going to do that. And it becomes so precognitive that it doesn't even happen anymore. Okay. And that's when the stillness starts to occur. So you have to kind of bring yourself out of this like in the moment knee jerk reaction to things emotionally. Um, to and the way to start that is to develop the self awareness of like, oh, this is happening to me right now. This is what I do, right? And become more and more aware of it. That's how you become still like the mountain. That's the very beginnings of it. All right, number 20 here is attracting women has nothing to do with women at all. While much of what we discussed here was about women, the very root of it has nothing to do with women and everything to do with you. If you make attracting women about women, it reveals that you hold them above you, that they have some kind of power over you. The core attraction is to attract yourself to yourself. This means to be attractive. This means to be attractive, there can't be a single drop of self-rejection. If there is, you will end up using the woman to feel better about yourself. See Rule 15, which is do not care for her attention at all. All right? Because if you got self-rejection, you're going to use her like a drug. And depending on the severity of your self-rejection, you're going to use more of her, or you're going to use multiple women. Okay. I'm of the mind that there's actually a very small sliver percentage of men in the world who are grounded within themselves. They do not need women. They are just emotionally stable and very much centered. Okay. That also involve themselves with multiple women, and it does nothing for them emotionally. And I don't mean that they're cold and cut off, but in the sense that it fulfills a need within them so that they can feel better about themselves. I think most like players who like have rosters and things like that, they're actually using all of these drug sources to siphon energy from so that they can feel validated and safe. That's what I think most people do. So with just single people. So if that happens with single people, my guess is that if someone's doing that with multiple people, it's still the same algorithm, or it's still the same formula or mathematical system. It's just spread through multiple people, right? So I think that there's very few, I already know that there's very few men, all right? There's very few men in the world. And so if that's the case, the chances are if there's a bunch of players out there, probably what? 2% of them are actually grounded men who don't actually need women. They just desire them. And it doesn't go very far in the desire. Okay. It's not like, oh, this moves me poetically. No, it's just like, yeah, I like that. Right. I really like that. But it doesn't penetrate. It's not pulled or tethered to something subconscious or emotional. Right. Very small percentage. So for these guys who are like talking about how many women they get and, what's going on with their roster, and I've got 12 submissives and all this sort of shit, guaranteed, if they're even telling the truth in the first place, guaranteed there's going to be something there that has to do with using them to feel better about themselves. Guaranteed. Because when you're whole, when you have like all of your needs met, like through your own self-actualization, there's really not much you need from like external sources beyond what's necessary, like a roof, clothing, food, water, air, like that sort of stuff. Okay. And so it changes. Okay. All right. So thank you for reading through the 20 rules of attraction. You've been given cursory notes about attraction and have a bit of a leg up from the rest of the sleeping males out there. But your journey as a seeker has just begun. There's a lot more to becoming a sexually attractive dominant man. And to see how far the rabbit hole goes, follow the link and get on the coaching program that fits your time and budget best. So, all the links are in the bio or the description rather to this video and many of my other videos. Get in touch with me, set up a time to get on a free consultation, and we can just chat for 30 minutes and see about how I can help you. Also, go on to Amazon if you want to expand your bedroom game. Again, this won't make you into a man, right? No book is going to make you into a man. That requires mentorship. This will help you become a very good lover. So this is How to Be a Dominant Lover. Find it on Amazon. And then my philosophical compendium of deep words as it pertains to dominance and manhood. This is the book you want to carry with you to give you some insight if you're into philosophy and deep thinking and shit like that. Okay, so let's close that out. Thank you for joining me on this really, really cold evening. New York is expected to get over 12 inches of snow tomorrow and Monday morning. So if you're in the midst of this snowstorm, please, stay warm, get your snacks, get on your what is it? Your Harry Potter movie marathon, and enjoy yourselves tomorrow. All right, be safe, and thank you for joining me. Have a good evening.